A bowl game was played, a bowl game was lost, and a bowl game was humiliating.
You are Locked On Wolfpack, your daily podcast on the NC State Wolfpack, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Wolfpack Nation? It's time to get locked in with Locked On. Thanks for making Locked On Wolfpack your first listen each and every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Happy Monday to all. As always, I'm Grayson Boone, joined by former Wolfpack defensive tackle Kenton Gibbs. Kenton, we are 36 hours post-mortem. NC State loses the Military Bowl 26-21 to the ECU Pirates. Does not feel any better on Sunday. Does not feel any better on Monday. That was an absolute stinker. Humiliating loss, disappointing loss, fill in the blank. That's the kind of loss it was. Very bitter end to what was one of the most disappointing seasons for NC State football in quite some time. With the expectations that were placed on this team and the whole roster reconstruction, all the excitement that was poured into the program, including monetarily through NIL, to finish 6-7 and lose your bowl game against ECU, just a complete and unmitigated disaster.
You know, Grayson, I liken this season to eating at Taco Bell. You know, for some reason, you're always a little more excited than you actually should be pulling up. And then when you get your food, when the actuality of what you're doing hits you, it's just like, man, I guess it doesn't taste great. Then
you pay the price for it later.
And then you pay the price on the back end. Grayson, National Signing Day was the back end, where, like you and I had discussed, I had talked to a couple of big-time recruits and knew that NC State winning big this season could have potentially turned the tide. Yep. It could have signaled a shift that was going to be very relevant going forward. We did not get that done. And so the ill effects of not getting some of those big-name recruits and some of them not even looking our way at all. I'm not saying if we win 10, 11, 12 games this year, all of a sudden we win every recruiting battle. I'm saying guys who did not look our way twice at least start to say, let's think about it. What's going on over there? As opposed to saying, wait, that team barely beat Western Carolina. Wait a minute. That team didn't look competitive against Tennessee. Wait a minute. This team lost to Eastern Carolina University. You know, like I said, it's always disappointing to eat at Taco Bell, and it's always disappointing to have a season like this. It really is. It's just nasty work and nasty business all the way around. And to cap it off with a bowl game where everything bad that we had seen throughout the season comes back to bite us again. I mean, it's just like we know who this team is. We still expect it better. And honestly, it's not even on the team at that point. That's on me. That's on me for expecting this team to get together in the red zone. You know, I had some people coming at me about my 45-point prediction. Well, if you score if you score touchdowns the two times you're in the 25 or deeper, that puts you at what, 35?
At least, yeah.
But hey, I should have known that this team was going to struggle in the red zone as they had all season, and so you get what you get.
Yeah, it's a great point. Perhaps we were the ones that were completely naive, and the rest of this fan base, why did we expect to actually show up in a bowl game and perform well when we haven't all season? This team was heavily flawed for the entirety of a 12-game regular season. The offensive struggles are well documented. The defensive struggles were well documented. And I think that was the most shocking thing that we saw Saturday night in the bowl game. To give up 326 yards on the ground to anyone, let alone ECU, is staggering. We'll get more into the numbers here in just a little bit, but that's the same sentiment all season long. It's a team that can't get out of their own way. It's a team that routinely self-implodes and finds ways to lose games instead of finding ways to win them. And I think this game really was an encapsulation of everything we experienced over a 3-month season. So it is incredibly disappointing. It's not going to get any easier over the course of the offseason because, you know, ECU fans, they're enjoying this exactly how you think that they would be enjoying this. And rightfully so. To the victor goes the spoils. They earn the right to trash talk for the next 8 months, so be it. But it sucks. It absolutely sucks. And whether you feel that bowl games really do matter or they're losing their luster with opt-outs and whatever else, this is a game that NC State has to find a way to win. Not just because it's ECU, but the fact that we haven't won a bowl game since 2016, 2017? And when you're looking at momentum, and I think that leads me into my next point, the momentum for this team, when you retain all of your top talent, and then you start turning the page to 2025 and hoping that you can do something different than what you did this year to experience more success than a 6-6 season, you really feel like you forfeited a lot of that momentum by losing this ball game. And that, I think, is one of the toughest pills to swallow here. This game should have been a springboard when, in fact, you broke the diving board and you fell in the freezing cold pool.
To put this in perspective, to really put this in perspective for those of you who don't get it, Grayson and I've been doing this show for 3 years, Grayson a little bit shorter than that.
Yep.
Last time NC State won a bowl game, Grayson and I were on NC State's campus as students.
Yeah, that's true.
I have nearly a decade's worth of experience in doing what I do professionally now outside of this. If you get where I'm going here, like this is objectively not good. And while we talk about, hey, bowl games don't matter and all this and that, you know what does matter? Winning.
Yes.
You know what
always
matters? Winning against teams who won football games. Do you know what a bowl game de facto means? You at least won half of your games, if not more. So when you look at that situation and you say, you know, the biggest criticism of Doran has always been, oh, his wins are empty calories. They come against bad teams. Well, how do you dispute or refute that argument when you look up and you say, well, damn, we haven't won a bowl game since, 2 presidents ago? Like, what are we doing here, man? This is it sucks. It's awful. And I will offer up just one big picture takeaway that I don't want to save for the silver linings portion of this show. There is one thing that I would look at. NC State this year was exceptionally, and when I say exceptionally, I mean like I don't understandably bad in single score games. Yeah. Like we only beat NIU and Cal and the Dirty Foot Club in one score games. However, we lost to Syracuse, we lost to Wake Forest, we lost to Georgia Tech, and of course we lost against ECU. So I guess 3 and 4 in one score games isn't the worst thing in the world when you imagine yourself getting better next year. But again, we got to get a lot better in a lot of ways, you know. And the words of that old song, we got a long way to go and a short time to get there.
And I think, too, the way in which you couldn't close out those one-score games, like, for example, it's ECU. They threw not 1 but 2 interceptions that afforded you the chance to close out that game. Couldn't do it, and then they rip off an 86-yard run in your face to win the game. Georgia Tech literally begged us to win the game at the end of it. Gave it away, allowed them to drive all the way down the field. The freshman quarterback never used a spy at any point in time, bit us in the you-know-what, lost that game. Wake Forest, although the McCall injury very early in that kind of threw off the whole feng shui, we had our chances at the end of that game to put it away, couldn't do it. Wake Forest wins. This team found ways, like I already said, to lose games instead of win them. And that is how we will remember the 2024 NC State football team. With the amount of talent we assumed we configured into this roster, maybe it wasn't as good as we all thought or hoped it would be. I still think it is. A lot of the time, it circles back to coaching. It feels like many of these games, they were not prepared. The players were not being put in the best circumstances to go out and succeed. And when that is the case, this is the results you're going to get. You're going to go 6-6 with a talented team if you can't find ways to put your best players on the field, nonetheless in positions to succeed when they're on the field. So this is what it is. You lose a horrible game against ECU. Again, shout out ECU. You won the game. Congratulations.
Yeah,
you get to go for 8 months. We'll see you in August. Very disappointing end of the year for NC State. 26-21 loss in the Military Bowl. Coming up next, we're going to get into the weeds of this game, more numbers-based, both offensively and defensively. This comes after a quick word from our sponsors. Our Monday sponsor is Rocket Money. Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions you forgot about or that you were paying for twice? It's definitely happened to me, and I had a few subscriptions that I didn't even realize I was paying for Rocket Money makes it so easy to track all of these down. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions. They monitor your spending and help lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals that you're wanting to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of over 500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year. For me, one of the best features is the subscription tracker. I've used it to cancel these services that I wasn't using anymore, and I've already saved a ton. Plus, with their goals feature, I've been able to automatically set aside money for my future. No more stressing about budgeting every month. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. Middle portion of our Monday show, now getting a little bit further into the weeds of this Military Bowl loss. 26-21 final, ECU wins it. I want to start here on the offensive side of the ball. Now, we mentioned this Saturday night. I actually thought C.J. Bailey played a great game. He was 19 of 26 for 230 through the air, 3 passing touchdowns. He had that 1 interception at the very end of the game. Wouldn't exactly put that on him. It hit Hollywood in both of his hands before it was deflected, but it is what it is. Passer rating was 177.8. He also picked up 24 yards on the ground, very hard-earned 24 yards, a couple times in some clutch situations. What did you see from CJ in this game, Kenton, that really gives you more confidence for him in the future?
I saw the same CJ Bailey that I had seen most of the season, right? Like, don't get me wrong. When I say that, people are going to take that as a negative. But no, I really did see a guy that constantly improved throughout the season, constantly got better throughout the season. And if you don't believe me, just look at game by game what we saw from this young man. I believe the first time that we saw him in meaningful playing time was against Louisiana Tech. And from there were multiple times where you're like, oh, boy, he's got to hit that. The next game, when he comes in against Wake Forest, the game-ending interception, I don't know what happened there.
It's a freshman throw.
It was one of those throws where you're just like, that kid was slow dancing at prom last year or actually a few months ago, and it looks like it, right? He had one of those throws. Other than that, I did not see a ton that I was just like, oh, boy, there's no shot here. And again, over these last 2 games, you're looking at 5 touchdowns to 2 interceptions. You're looking at both games having a 70% or higher completion percentage. You're looking at both of those games he was a net positive in the running game, even though I think he should have been pulled out of the running game in the ways that he was put in. He still found a way to be a positive there. So all in all, I'd say what I saw from C.J. Bailey is what I saw from C.J. Bailey throughout the season. A guy that just kept getting better, kept improving, kept working through his reads, kept making better time in terms of he was holding on to the ball too long a bit at times, even in this game. But he was more decisive in terms of, you know what, I'm going to pull it down, I'm going to run. You know what, there's nothing available. I'm not going to keep playing around right here. So, what I saw from CJ is what I've seen all year.
For the majority of this season, I think one of the more impressive things about CJ is we never lost any games because of him. And despite him being a freshman, he didn't kill you in any major games. I know he did throw 3 interceptions against Georgia Tech, but you still only lost by 1 point. You were still very much in that game, despite some of his struggles in that game. So I think that is something to take as inspiring in CJ moving forward. He impressed me, to be quite honest with you. He played a lot better than what I would have expected from a true freshman, just thrown into the fire. With McCall going down due to injury and the rest of your season lies on the shoulders of a true freshman, all the other expectations kind of just go out the window. And it's just like, well, I guess we're going to find out what this kid can do or maybe can't do. There's certainly a lot of things that need to be improved upon in terms of comfortability in the pocket and going through his reads, making the right decision. All of that will hopefully be touched on over the course of the offseason. But the building blocks of him just as an athlete and as a quarterback, sky-high optimism there. He seems to be a great leader. The rest of the team seems to love playing with him. And a lot of times that matters, like sometimes more than talent, so to speak. If your team rocks with your quarterback, there is a bond sometimes that can take you above just play calling and just, game planning, whatever you want to call it. This team loves to rally around CJ, and I do think that means something. And you saw that in several different points over the course of the season, whether it was the comeback at Cal or the comeback against the Dirty Foot Club, what have you. I am impressed overall from what I saw out of a true freshman. CJ, for me, was a net positive, both in this game and over the course of this season. Now, moving forward into the skill players here, it goes without saying the number one positive mark for NC State all night was Hollywood Smothers. He had a career night on the ground, 15 carries for 139, averaged 9.3 yards per carry, and then he also had 2 catches for 42 yards through the air and a touchdown. Not exactly a shock, because anyone that's watched NC State this season knows the athlete that Hollywood Smothers is. Every time he's on the field and every time he has the ball in his hands, he has a chance to take it to the house every single touch. The reason I want to bring this up, because he did not see the field in the third quarter. How on earth, I want to say this again, how on earth is that the case? Hollywood dashed them in the first half, and I believe, I forgot to look again, I think it was like 86 rushing yards in the first half. And you could see it every time he had the ball. Visible burst that ECU was not able to catch up with right on. How you don't exploit that over the course of the entire evening is just like, what am I in banana land? Like, what are we even discussing right now? We certainly expected him to be great, and he was. That is far and away the most talented running back you have on the roster. Kendrick Raphael, in my mind, can still serve as a pretty good change of pace back, but I need as many possible touches to Hollywood Smothers as you can get in a 60-minute game.
I don't know a world where Hollywood was not one of the best players on this team all season. I do not know a world where I look at Hollywood and I say going into next year, oh, he's not going to be an absolute bell cow for this team.
Yeah.
I don't know a world where we should even be discussing in any type of meaningful way, oh, there needs to be a very healthy running back rotation here. I'm not saying that he needs to get every single touch there is to get. But what I am saying is, again, we cannot keep up with this, oh, well, we're going to go ahead and kind of make things happen however we can. I am telling you right now, when you look around the rest of the conference, the amount of guys who meet these two criteria that Hollywood Smothers meets, it is literally one guy, 80 or more carries, over 6 yards per carry. Isaac Brown from Louisville, Hollywood Smothers. That's it. Isaac Brown made every single true freshman All-American list you could imagine. He did all the things. He was a 1,000-yard rusher over at Louisville. He was their bell cow. I am telling you right now, if we do not do that with Hollywood, we are intentionally. It is tantamount to coaching damn malpractice.
Yes.
To not get him the ball. And speaking of, that's something I want to introduce to this conversation for a second, because this idea that our best players are not touching the ball enough, not getting the ball enough, not being targeted enough. At what point are we going to get enough of it? At what point are we going to get enough of saying, you know what, we're going to ride our Hellcat in the right lane? Brother, that scat pack that you're paying for, you're not paying for the racing stripe. Get over in that left lane and open that thing up. I probably shouldn't. Hey, RPD, I drive the speed limit now. But you get the point. Stop it. What are we doing? Say, oh, man, Justin Jolie, I don't know how we're going to get in the ball. You know what's crazy? Of all the screens that we said we hated all this year, did we see one tight end screen to Justin Jolie not work out well for this team?
No, not until Saturday night.
You know, and so I just look at this situation and I say, he was our leading receiver all year, and we don't say, you know what, we're going to force the issue. We're going to make them take him away, and we're going to make them say, with these backup DBs, we're going to check everybody on the outside one-on-one. We didn't do that. We didn't do it. And of course, you talk about coaching malpractice and everybody talking about why didn't our boy Paler play, which I would love to see. Elijah Groves, get him on the field.
Yeah.
Get that young man on the field. Again, some of the linebacker play I saw this season, including this last game, it was some of the worst. It was some of the most atrocious stuff that I have ever seen from a Power 4 football unit. from an entire unit. Don't get me wrong. There were individuals who played like FBS Power 5 players or Power 4 players. Some of these guys, I literally was like, am I high? Did Gibson switch up something? Did he change? What are you looking at? What's your key? What gaps are you responsible for? So what does it matter to have the best weapons, to have the best tools on earth if you're not going to use them?
So that leads me directly into a tweet I had queued up here. This is a quote from Dave Doran on Saturday night. We had several folks tag us on Twitter. This says, and I quote, "Easy thing to do is to blame a play caller when there's 11 guys on the field needed to block, run, and catch. It's everyone's fault. Always looking to see if we could have called better plays. It's easy to point the finger at that one guy," unquote. Well, Coach Doran, the 11 guys on the field are not calling a QB draw on 3rd and 6. The 11 guys on the field are not running directly into a loaded box out of the shotgun formation on 4th and 1. And I tell you who does put those 11 players on the field, the coaching staff. The coaching staff and their offensive approach to the season was garbage, repeatedly, all season long, not distributing the ball to our best playmakers, at times not even having them on the field in key moments of the game. That is the issue, and that's why people are placing blame on, quote-unquote, that one guy. Or perhaps in this case, it should be 2 guys. That is what we are upset about. The personnel has been wrong. The formations, not effective. The play calling in itself, the screenplays that we wanted to rip our hair out over, not effective. That's why we're pointing fingers, because it never got solved over the course of the season. From game 1 to game 13, the same problems plagued us all the way through. And that is coaching malpractice. It is. Kenton, before we move on, what are your thoughts here on this quote from Coach Doran?
You know what pisses me off the most about that quote?
Talk
Grayson,
about it.
What was the formation on that 4th and 1 try? How many tight ends do we have in the game?
I think 2.
2 tight ends. How many wide receivers do we have in the game?
I want to say 1 or 2.
Do we have a fullback in the game, Grayson?
No.
So we had a running back and 2 tight ends against a loaded box.
Correct.
So what I'm hearing is we had 7 blockers against a loaded box.
Yeah.
Do you know how many people need to generally be in a box for it to be considered loaded? 8. So hypothetically speaking here, we're at a numbers disadvantage to begin with.
Yeah.
I was always taught coaches are responsible for the first 3 steps. Everything after that is you being an athlete. And by coaches are responsible for the first 3 steps, that means that any coach at the Power 4 level should be able to recruit well enough, not to where you're dominating folks just because of your physicality and all that. But in the first 3 steps, I should be able to get you technique and fundamental wise in an advantageous position. And then after those 3 steps, everything else is, hey, you got to be an athlete. You got to be a badass. You got to be that guy that says, I'm going to put my helmet on your helmet. You're going to move the other way. You're going to move back, not me. And, you know, when a play is blown up as quickly as that one was, we didn't get our full 3 steps in. So if so facto, coach is responsible for first 3 steps. Hollywood is hit before first 3 steps. What does that mean to you all? And I'll leave it at that.
Yeah. We spent the majority of the time talking about the offense, so perhaps we'll save more defensive talk for Tuesday. But coming up next, we're going to get into our big picture takeaways from this loss to ECU. This comes after a quick word from our sponsors. Last couple minutes of our Monday show. Now time to get into our big picture takeaways from this Military Bowl loss to ECU. Kenton, I'll let you kick us off.
You know, big changes have to happen, period. Big changes have to happen. We have talked for too long about, hey, this is who this team has been. This is who this team is. And it is a problem that spans beyond this year to a certain extent because we consistently lack the ability to get it done. We're consistently saying, oh, we were 1 or 2 plays away. Oh, well, if you flip those 4 one-loss games into wins, all of a sudden we're at 10. Oh, if ifs and buts were bears and nuts, squirrels would never starve. We live in the real world. And in the real world, NC State continues to be NYU, which means next year university. Oh, next year's our year. We're going to take it to them next year. Oh, we're building something special next year. At what point in time will next year materialize into right now? At what point in time will next year materialize into I'm enjoying this? We're winning now. We get to be the Black Hats now. That is what I want for this team more than anything else. I no longer want to be the upstart, the team that gets an upset every now and then. I want to be the team that everybody looks at and hates and says, oh, my God, oh, those fans, oh, that team, oh, we know what's coming, and we're sick of it. We're not used to seeing this, but this is who they are now. We're just not there.
Big picture takeaways, I have two. My first one is that the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. This team, we talked about it for the entire season, game 1 to game 13. They never established any semblance of an identity. And that's on both sides of the ball, offensive or defensive. Never had a real clear-cut identity for the entire season. So the identity, in fact, became that this is a team that self-implodes, a team that gets in their own way more than they get out of it, and they constantly find ways to lose instead of find ways to win. It was true in late August. It's true now in late December. This team could not and would not find a way to not beat themselves in order to beat the other opponent. And that falls on the coaching staff, which leads me directly into number 2. Talked about this a lot on Saturday night after the loss, but the mindset going into this bowl game against ECU, in the fact that Coach Dorn posed this as, well, we don't really see this as a rivalry because we don't play them every year. And yeah, they're in state, but, it's a bowl game and blah, blah, blah. That exactly is where the game was lost. The game was not even lost on Saturday night. It was lost like 3 weeks ago. If you go into this game with the mindset that it doesn't really matter that much and it means more to ECU than it does to us, you have already lost the mental war.
Exactly.
You have already lost before the game was kicked off. And that is infuriating because it also connects to my point 1, the failure of the coaching staff to get these guys ready. And when I mean ready, I mean from the first snap, where you don't have to scramble to make a fourth quarter comeback because you showed up early in the first quarter and you were able to start getting the job done then. Couldn't see it all season long. That's a failure on the coaching staff. And it's infuriating because it's like, how many more times, how many more seasons do we have to witness that type of coaching mentality and that type of coaching philosophy? It doesn't work. There are 12 seasons of proof that show you that mentality does not work. It didn't work in 2014. It doesn't work in 2024. And I can promise you, it's also not going to work in 2025. This coaching staff not only has to do some reconfiguring, which I would expect here probably in the next couple of weeks, but the whole mindset has to shift. They preach so much about culture, and that's great. You have a good culture, but the mindset and the philosophy has to be in lockstep with that, and it hasn't been. And that's why you're 6-7 after one of the most anticipated seasons that we've all seen in quite some time in Raleigh. It's terrible. So what do you do moving forward? You have to find a way to clean whatever slates need to be cleaned, rally the troops, and get back in the lab. This is a very bitter and disappointing season, but that can turn into 2 if you allow it to. Much like we talk about 1 loss snowballing into 2 loss, 1 bad season can very easily snowball into 2 bad seasons if you allow it to. So it's very important to learn from this, from the entire season, not just the bowl game, but learn from everything, get back in the lab and make adjustments. You have to be flexible, be willing to open doors that you have not opened before, because to get to where you've never been, you have to do what you've never done. And that's going to be imperative for this team, this program, and this coaching staff heading into the offseason. I don't know how long it's going to take to get this bad taste out of our mouth. Perhaps it'll be when we see ECU again in late August. Maybe we can perhaps beat them when that time comes around. Yikes. Ugly loss in Military Bowl. The season comes to a very sour end, 26-21. Kenton, any final thoughts before we get out of here on Monday?
Grayson, you're 1,000% right in this loss in the mindset. I don't know what bro is on. If you don't like me, it's I hate you too.
Yeah.
If you feel like it's personal with me, I was here to handle business. But now if it's personal, it's personal.
Yeah.
And this here is a bad taste that's going to be in my mouth all off season. I'm sorry. Until I see those guys again. But do you know how many of my friends from ECU have texted me. Oh, nice
I've
school.
gotten quite a
Yours?
few myself.
You know, and I'm gonna just say something. I don't have too many friends from ECU of the male variety. That just does not. That's not how life works out 9 times out of 10. So I know, I get it, Coach D. I understand. Nobody wants to lose a game and all that good stuff. And I'm going to talk directly to Coach Doran before we sign off on one of our last episodes that are strictly focused on this game going forward. But Coach D, I need you to understand something, okay? That's never going to be the way to get it done. Some people say, oh, you can't put too much emphasis on this game or on that game. In the context of a regular season, when you've got to play a game a week after that, sure, I guess. I kind of get where you're going. But in this moment right here, in this one right here, Grayson, quick question. Who does NC State play next week?
Season's over.
Season's over. So there's not another team to play. So there's not anybody else to focus on the game plan. In this situation in particular, you don't like me? Oh, I am. Don't worry about it. The amount of hate you are about to feel for me is everything I can give you plus some. And again, Doran, you've got to have your team better prepared than this. You've got to have your team better ready than this. Oh, you lost your defensive coordinator. They're coaching with an interim guy. Just got the interim tag removed. Oh, well, we had some departures, but they had more departures in the portal than you. So again, at some point in time, it's if you are a part of the Rainbows and Sunshine crew, I need you to come back to earth. Because while I'll always support you if you're in the red and white, as long as Coach Doran's the coach, he's got my support. But I cannot be mad and pretend to not understand somebody. I'm okay with losing the games to the teams whose budgets are exponentially bigger than yours. The teams we lost to this year, okay? These are all the teams that we lost to. That I know for a fact our budget is either bigger than or very comparable to. Syracuse, Duke, Wake Forest, ECU. I know. You're not going to tell me that their balance sheet is crushing ours. You're not going to tell me that. There's no way. So when you come up with losses like those, expect the fans to be upset. Expect the fans to file out early. Expect the fans to feel how they feel. Because again, if all of those teams, I'm sorry, I left off the juggernaut financially in Georgia Tech. Those are the teams that beat us this year. You've got to be better.
For Coach Doran and the coaching staff, accountability is your responsibility. And that will do it for us here on Monday. Be sure to hit that like button, drop your comments in the comment box, mash that subscribe button if you have not already. We'll see you right back here tomorrow on Tuesday for more. And until then, go Pack.
Go Pack. Talking about some damn 11 players.